Hey, I'm Bob and I like to make stuff. Today we're going to start making R2-D2. This is a project that I've been wanting to do for a very, very long time. In fact, since I was a kid, I've always loved Star Wars and I've always wanted to have an R2. So I decided recently to get started on the project, and the first step was a ton of research. The R2 Builders Club has a website called astromech.net, and this is the place you're going to go for all of the information that you're going to need. It's a community of people that are super helpful and willing to answer questions, plus there's blueprints and tons of reference for everything. So as you're doing research there's a bunch of decisions you're going to have to make before you can even start. And those decisions are things like what material you're going to use, what functionality it's going to have, whether it's going to lean back, have 2 legs, 3 legs. There's a ton of options. I haven't decided on all the functionality I'm going to use yet, but I did decide to make the core, or the frame, out of plastic. I'm going to use something called Styrene, which is an ABS plastic, so that I can cut it on the CNC. If you don't have a CNC, you can certainly just go onto the website and print out templates that you can glue onto plywood or plastic. Those things can be cut out with normal woodworking tools, or you can just use a hobby knife and a chisel. Either way, you're going to have some files handy so that you can get a really nice fit on all the different pieces. Another option is 3D printing. In fact, you could 3D print top to bottom the entire droid if you really wanted to. You could certainly make every single part on the droid yourself if you want to, but there are also vendors who create screen accurate parts, and they sell them in batches. If you keep an eye on the website, you'll see when a vendor has a new batch of parts, and you just put your name on a list so that you can get the parts that you need. But the downside of that is that you have to kind of wait in line, and you have to wait for the parts to be available. The upside to it is that you get beautifully machined aluminum parts that are super accurate. I decided to make the inside of the droid, but buy a lot of the outside pieces from these vendors. I got the skins and the dome, and then a whole bunch of these detail pieces to fit in, and they are beautiful. These are ready to go for paint or powder coat. So I have my first cuts of R2-D2 finished on the CNC, so it's really cool to have the frame all ready to go and start assembling it. Obviously, if you don't have a CNC, there are other ways to get that cut. Most people will go to a local office supply store, like I did. I spent about $18, printed out the templates full size, and then they glue these onto the material and cut it out with a Dremel or with a jigsaw or something else like that. The irony is, though, that I actually had to go get these things printed out anyway, even though the pieces were cut on the CNC. When I went to start looking at assembling the frame, I realized that a lot of the marks on these templates are really about placement and assembly, not about cutting. So I had to print these out. I'm going to have to cut these out by hand and then glue them onto the frame before I can start assembling it. Now luckily I don't have to cut everything out. These have all been cut and they don't really have any special information on them. The big thing is these rings. These dark areas are where you put the uprights, and so I have to cut these pieces out, glue them to my plastic, and then score over these lines, then take these templates off so I know where to put the uprights and glue those things in place. So I'm going to start going through these sheets and cutting all the pieces I need. There were some pieces that I had to bevel using the table saw, but you could also do that with a file if you need to. That's so that these pieces will fit together at the right angles. And to hold them perpendicular to each other while I glued them up, I used these 1, 2, 3 blocks. These are great for keeping things parallel or perpendicular. To assemble all of these plastic parts, I used CA glue. There are special solvents that you can use for all different plastics, but I did quite a few tests, and the CA glue actually seemed to work out just fine and be strong enough. Luckily, the construction of this frame lends itself to being pretty strong, and so the individual joints don't have to carry a whole lot of load. One of the parts that I ordered were aluminum skins. These are the actual body panels that go on the outside of the droid, and these turned out beautifully. These are laser cut aluminum and then rolled on a machine to the right radius, and they look great. Even after making the frame, you do have to line up some of the individual pieces with the openings in the skins. There's all these panels in the skins that get cut out, so you have to make sure that the frame behind those openings is clear. Something I'm not used to about this R2 project is that a lot of the pieces are actually better to be made by other people. They'll do parts runs where they'll take orders for a certain part, then they'll make a whole bunch of them, and it's usually the machined aluminum stuff. These are some of the ones that I just ordered, and I haven't looked at them yet, but they look so good. It's totally worthwhile to get something like this done. I mean, you could 3D print it, I suppose, but like, there's a contour, it's super well machined, it's just ready to drop in and ready to go. So for example, on these, the back surface here needs to stay aluminum, and this needs to stay aluminum. So they're made so that you can unbolt this, pull the whole back off, and then paint the inside here, and then bolt that back on. Works out pretty well. Now they are usually more expensive, but this project is not really a cheap project anyway. I followed the same process for cutting out the templates and cutting out the pieces on the CNC for the legs, and then it was time to put them together. The body of R2-D2 was made all out of one thickness of material, and I've used that same thickness to cut parts of the legs, but the legs actually do require 2 other thicknesses as well. I've put those on order, and while I'm waiting for them to show up, I'm going to go ahead and assemble these pieces that I have so far. Luckily, the instructions that the guy put out with these files are super easy to follow. It's just a matter of gluing this stuff together just like I did the body. And actually, these legs are far from complete. There are tons of detail pieces that get put on the outside, plus the ankles and the actual feet. But after several weeks of work, I was dying to actually see if it looked like R2-D2. So I decided to loosely bolt the legs together, tape on the skins, and then drop on the dough. Obviously, I am super excited about this project, and it is really cool to see R2 up to this point. Now, this is a very long-term and a pretty expensive project, and I'm not going to go over the specific costs that I'm putting into it because it's going to be different for every person. Depending on what build type you're using, what materials, your cost is going to be very, very different. Because it's such a long-term project, I don't know when the next build video is going to be out about R2, but if you don't want to miss it, be sure to subscribe. And in the meantime, I've got tons of other project videos of all different types that you can check out right over there. That's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time. I'm really happy to have gotten this far so far. That's my out of order. Tons of other project videos for you to check out, so click out.